What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to create this very bold looking landscape design, like bold in terms of the line work, very heavy with line work in comparison to like a normal tutorial that I do. But it's a really fun tutorial and I hope you enjoy it. Now make sure to grab all of the requirements for today's tutorial from the link in the description down below. It takes you over to a post on my Patreon. Make sure to read all the details because then it will show you how you can get hold of the palette, and that's it. You will need Procreate 5.4, but there are brushes in the original Procreate that you can use in order to get the same result. Now, a couple of things I want you to be aware of. Right at the very end of the tutorial, we changed the line work to the blue tones instead, and you have the option to pick if you like the black outline or the blue outline. It's totally up to you. You can decide right at the very end of the tutorial. It's just like I always keep my final tweaks right at the very end, and that's something I left right in for you to do at the end if you make it all the way to the end. Make sure to tag me in your finished creations when you're done. And as always, check out my Patreon because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters. And they have a catalogue now of over 150 exclusive tutorials that are not available here on YouTube. They're only available on Patreon. So with all that said, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial and let's get started. So as you'll be able to see on my screen, I've got my guide in play. That is just simply a layer that I've inserted in there. And to do that, just go to your actions, go to the option of add and insert the photo that I've provided of the PNG, and it will add itself in here. We're just going to use that as a guide just for some general kind of positioning. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer in front of the guide, and we'll actually go ahead and tap on the layers, the guide's opacity, and just bring it down to around about say 30%. Now on this top layer, we're going to go to our colors and we want the top left color in the palette. Now our brush of choice today is Pens and Leafy or Liffy brush. Now bear in mind I am on the 5.4 update, which is available as an update now to everybody. And to get to your libraries, just go up here and you want the Procreate library and you want the pens section and the Liffy. You could use, if you don't have the update for whatever reason, you could use something under calligraphy or inking like the studio pen. So that's just an option. We're going to use this brush here. I've got the brush size initially set to 15%. It is pressure sensitive, so we can get some nice thin lines, we can get some nice chunky lines, and we can make use of that as we go. So the first part of this entire design is just simply making sure we draw in all the elements. That's it. So I'm going to start off down here, roughly around about here. I'm going to draw in a rock of some sort. Like a little rounded shape, just get the shape in, and then what we will do is we will just go ahead and like kind of draw everything in, and if you need to at any time you can just simply go ahead and kind of erase a line if you need to make space for something else perhaps. So I'm going to let this rock run like a little bit flatter. I want it to run in behind. Don't worry if you get a little line here or there. The one thing you want to make sure you do is hold down on your eraser now. It will switch it to the exact same brush, and then you can just tidy up little tiny edges here and there where you feel is appropriate. Now you can start detailing things as well as we go. Now light source wise, it is going to be somewhat like top left here coming across. So as it comes across onto your scene, you therefore maybe want to darken up like in here, for example, in between these rocks. Don't overdo it at this early stage, but you know, you can start to definitely add in some details of your rocks. Also like shadows here towards the bottom of the shape as it sort of touches the ground. You can do the same over here. This front section over here is going to be a lot sort of thicker in terms of the lighting. So as we get further back in our scene shortly, we will no doubt end up making the brush size a little bit smaller as we go, just so we can continue to make sure that the detail kind of falls off the further it gets further back in our scene. So just some very simple kind of little touches up of the rock surface here. I can sort of just create whatever kind of little jagged lines here and there I feel is appropriate for the rock. The main thing you want to do is just make sure that the kind of base, as I said, is a little bit darker. And definitely here I want to sort of shadow across there because I imagine that this rock here would cast a shadow across onto that one. And that's going to be the main part that we're going to start with. I want to go ahead and create another rock somewhat over here. So like a little kind of point on that, and then maybe like a sharp straight edge on it. And then I'll come across, just making sure I keep things fairly simple, to be honest with you. I don't want to overcomplicate it. It's just meant to be a rock. And then maybe I'll like draw in like a big chunky line here using the pressure of the brush to my advantage. And then maybe we'll also go ahead and like sort of create like a wiggly crack line almost across the whole of the rock. Just a little something like that. And maybe a little one down here. Now right at the very end of this tutorial is where you can honestly sit down and start drawing in as much as you like in this scene. However, at the beginning, just get the basics in and then we'll build up from there. Now, I do want to go ahead and also draw in the land line here. So I'm just going to make my way all the way across. I'm going to wiggle it a tiny bit just to create some just sort of minimal details and just tie it in to your rock here, nice and smooth like so. We can also go ahead and perhaps draw in a rock that's somewhat in the water. So I can go ahead and draw in like another one here. In fact, I'll just make that a little bit smoother just so it follows suit a little bit more with the rest of them. So this one's a little bit lower and in the water. I can darken up that edge and again maybe just sort of wrap around like a little line here or there, little crack lines, etc., all the way up to where I feel is appropriate. So a little something like this. Then we can also go ahead and of course draw in some like little rocks here on the ground. I'll sort of bundle a few of them together, and don't worry again if you get any sort of untidy edges, you can always fix them in just a second just by simply creating like a darker shadow at the bottom. I can just wrap a shadow around the base of that one, for example, and run that in there. And then maybe like just a little line across some of these smaller rocks, just a little something like that. Very, very simple kind of styling. The next element we're going to draw in is some grass, and that's going to sit over here. And as I mentioned, you can just use your eraser at certain times just to delete things where you want to. However, just for a minute, we're going to draw in some grass in here, and they are just going to be flicks up. Now just leave your rock there just for a second. Let's just start just to the right of that and just create little flicks here. You can do upward lines, you can do crisscrossing lines. Just, you kind of want to make sure, I'll get rid of this little blob over here, that as you go, you start off at the top of what will be your kind of bundle of grass. And so I'm just going to let this one kind of flick outwards, a couple of little kind of triangle almost like shapes. And then as I mentioned, we can grab our eraser and just sort of chop through here. I'm going to just make that a little bit smaller. And that then will allow me just to sort of position some grass sort of in front of our little rock here. So I've got some sort of blades in here. Then at the bottom, just below it, we're going to start bringing the blades down a little bit. And as we do, we're going to make them like a little bit chunkier as we go. So you can just create lots and lots more additional blades in here. And then these ones are going to either be like a tiny bit shorter perhaps, but equally you want to make sure that they also just sort of gradient wise in terms of, they kind of scale wise should I say, just flow outwards and get a little bit shorter as they go. You can do like a few chunkier ones at the base here just to again block it all in and kind of match up a little bit with the additional style of the design. And you should end up with just like a little tuft of grass, and you can kind of just add in like little sort of flicks everywhere you like, just to add in, you know, just little blades of grass. You can add some just beside there. Bear in mind, wherever you add grass, you're going to have to add the grassy colour in a second. I could go ahead and perhaps just add a few just kind of a little bit further back. Now, just before I do that, let's actually erase that line so I can make a gap, and then I can just go ahead and create like a little kind of tuft in a similar fashion, little kind of tuft of grass. And then again, just a few sort of slightly chunkier ones at the bottom, which kind of blends it into the ground a bit more. That breaks up your kind of line there for your land as well, gives you a nice little bit of separation. We're going to do exactly the same just behind here as well with our grass. So what you can do is you can kind of preempt that maybe I'm going to make a gap here. So we just delete it and then we'll draw it back in if we need it. That's the thing with today's design, being that we are just creating kind of lots and lots of line work. Eventually we're going to kind of overlap certain elements here and there. So as you go, you can just sort of make amendments as we make our way through it. So just lots of little flicks. And again, you can make some a little bit chunkier as they get a little bit closer towards, say, the rock here. Just trying to sort of maybe allude to the fact it's a bit darker because, you know, it's all quite tightly packed together there perhaps. A couple more little flicks there too. And then as we get a little bit lower down, we just bulk that in a bit more as it sort of touches the top edge of our rock. I'm trying not to sort of interfere with the inside of the rock. I don't mind just above it having those dark lines, but a little bit sort of down below it would be the wrong thing to do. I want to just bulk in the dark line here up against the edge of the rock and then leave it. Now, of course, there's one line here that I want to tidy up because this line kind of got chopped off, so I can just make it kind of a little bit more interesting and a bit pointy as it kind of slots into the grass. Here, I can make my way along this line and then find a gap And then likewise here too, I can just sort of bring that towards there and just let the grass kind of poke its head up and out of that frame. Ultimately, this is your land at the bottom, and then later on when we come to colour this in, you can do exactly that and just make sure you stay within this boundary. Now on this same layer, we are going to go ahead and do the tree as well. So let's draw in the tree first, because that's really important. I'm going to start at the, let's start at the top and make our way down this line here, getting progressively longer and heavier as we get towards the bottom. And then you can do a parallel sort of line to that. Of course, making sure, as I always say, let's undo that one because it got a bit scatty at the top. You want to make sure you get a little bit thicker and just let it run off the side of the screen. That's perfect. From there, I'm going to go ahead and just run. I want that to be a little bit more seamless like that. There we go. Another line up there. I've gone quite wayward from my stencil, but that's perfectly fine. And then I'll just slot that in behind there. I could probably chunk them up a little bit, but I'll leave it for now. And then because of that, because I've not got any space over here by this line anymore, I can just leave a tiny gap if I want to, just for design purposes. And I can just run in like another little bit of line down towards the water. And then I want to go ahead and just down here create a rock. So I will just tidy up that edge. So just kind of erase into it a little bit just to give myself some more space. And then I'm going to just create like a rocky kind of shape here towards the water. And in fact, that one's a little bit too tall. I want that to kind of swoop in and then go down. There we go. And that'll be a nice continuous kind of bank, but we do end up with two levels to the bank. We've got this area here and then this slightly further back area. And of course, just like before, just make sure your rock has those kind of cracky kind of details to them, and maybe just a line across the bottom, just ever so slightly, just to indicate where that kind of sits. So, as I mentioned, later on in your design, you are more than welcome to keep getting in here and detailing. You don't have to do all of it right now based off of how this design works. The only other thing we need to do is go up to the top up here and create some branches. And they're just going to be simple lines that just sort of trail off like this, just sort of trail off away from our main trunk. And you just want to make sure that they don't run into that gap there between the two of them. So I'll just erase that. And then we'll just add some more. So we'll do another one up here, lots and lots of lines, and then just let them overlap as well if you want to. Always making sure they're a little bit chunkier as they leave the sort of main trunk of the tree. And if you can get some lines to overlap, don't force it, that's fine. We'll do one over here off the left-hand side and a little one over there. And then we will force a line because we're going to let one come from over here. And it's going to somewhat kind of just go immediately kind of downwards like this. It's going to just have like a heavy amount of weight to it. And then these ones are going to be super chunky as they make their way off of this front tree area here. And I'm just trying to avoid potentially running into the other one too much, but you should end up with a little bit of kind of stacking then. You can definitely tell that this one's in front there. So that's your tree done, and that's your foreground. We're going to go ahead and create a separate layer and drag it underneath because we do need to have these line works separated in this particular design for later on with the reflections. However, if you were to do this sometimes with just simply wanting to colour the whole thing in like a colouring book almost, you would do everything on one layer potentially. Now we are going to drop the size now to 7%. We're going to work over here now on our hut. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create like a rock down here in the left hand or the right hand side, should I say, for our land. We're then going to go ahead and create like another little rock off of there, a little bit flatter perhaps this one, and just let it kind of tuck in up here. And you could probably chunk them together, and then you can sort of pick out where you want to add some more bits down the landscape. Perhaps we end up with like a line. Let's add in a line for the land that kind of runs all the way down to here, connects across, and then from that line we can go ahead and create like a rock again, like another one just off of that. So I just want to go ahead and tidy up that line across the bottom. I still want the land to have that little bit of a kind of continuous line to it. I don't want it to have too many kind of interruptions. So I'm just then going to go ahead and just sort of run across. I'll probably make it all the way as best as I can. I'll do that again towards the end of the land just over here. And then just before we wrap it up, I'll just chop off the end. I'll grab my brush again and we will just create another kind of rock just on the end there, like that. And then you can go ahead and grab the top edge of the land and just kind of let that just run up just up towards the hut or the lodge or whatever you want to call it, and then leave it. From there though, you can then start to sort of detail in a little bit, because you could, for instance, just add in like trailing lines down to show perhaps the flow of the land just making its way down towards the water's edge. And you can chunk up them a tiny bit if you want to add in like a little bit of extra detail. We can let one line kind of run in from the right hand side to again show the flow of the hill down, and then we will come back to this all in a second. The only thing we will do though is just add in some very minor shadows across like the base of the rock, maybe a little bit on the rear almost, and just little wiggly lines across it. I've done a little cross on that one. This one here, we'll just run like a line across like here, and then maybe just darken up as it sort of recesses into the land perhaps. And then this one here, we will just add in like another one, a little bit of a line running across it. So this tutorial today has got a really sort of simple start to it. It's just all about drawing the actual main features of the whole design, and then it's later on where you get the chance to color it. So there's a real process to this. It takes a little bit of time just to get it all going. Now, of course, in the guide, I have aided you a little bit with the guide itself, so we can draw in a few different things here just to get us started. This is your horizon line, but it's also the balcony of the property. I'm going to draw in a horizontal line and pop one finger on the screen as well, just to triple check it's nice and straight. That is going to be our line that is going to be sort of the balcony porch area. And then this is a bit of land as well that kind of just runs up alongside the property as if it's kind of recessed into like a divot. And then once you've got this line in, you might want to go over it again just to chunk it out a little bit. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be fully straight. It doesn't need to be anything like that. We're then going to go ahead and go on to the end over here where we're going to go up. We're going to draw in a straight line, pop one finger on the screen, and then we'll draw in a parallel line to it. I'll manually do that and just touch them both together at the bottom, and likewise there. And I'll just get my eraser and just dig into there. So we create like a column, and then we're going to do that again here as well. So we will just draw in our lines. We can just tidy things up as we go. So like a straight line down, and then I'll draw in a parallel one beside it. That's fine. And then I'll just sort of connect them together across the top, across the bottom, and then I'll grab my eraser and just chop into the middle. There we go. So we've got a lovely little sort of set of wood starting to build up. Now, to be honest with you, I could probably do with making this one here, just based off of perspective, a teeny tiny bit lower, just to bring that corner out towards us. There we go. And then zooming out, that makes more sense. Perfect. From there, we've got then like additional elements like the house. So let's start on the house, because when you're doing this kind of line work in this style and you're erasing from your work as you go, you're better off starting at the back, making your way forward. You don't want to be drawing things in behind elements. It's much easier just to erase and make your way forward. So we'll just draw in a line down here. Again, I'm not too fussed about the lines, and I don't want them to be super straight or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in this line down towards here. Lovely. And then we'll draw in the top peak down towards this edge. So you've got the guide, it will help you out a bunch. And then we'll draw that one up there too. Just trying to make sure it's semi-parallel to what we've already drawn. That one will tuck underneath the roof there. And then this edge here can come down. That's the edge. Lovely. Let's go ahead then and just draw in the roof across here. And then we'll go down this edge here and go across. Now, as always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations when you're done. I love seeing your finished creations. Come and join my Facebook group as well. It's really active as well. People sharing their work, not only my tutorials, but every tutorial that they've done. So yeah, make sure to come and join us over there. It's good to see everybody's work. We'll then draw in a column here on this edge. So now we're going to get into kind of like details. I'm going to draw in another column here as well. And then we want to start drawing in some of the other wood frame, which is going to be just above this window here that I've kind of drawn in. Now I will straight line this just so I've got one straight line, and then I can go ahead and basically kind of work off of that. I've just grabbed my eraser. I'll shrink the size down so I can get in that gap now. There we go. And I can just bulk out the bottom line a tiny bit more. These details want to be fairly kind of strong because we want to be able to see them from afar. And then we're going to go ahead and we need to start working in kind of the top area up here. Now I want to go ahead and basically just draw in a circle. Hold one finger down on the screen just to get a perfect circle, just temporarily, and then But I say temporarily because we're just going to run our pen all the way around it with a little bit of wobble to it to make it fit the rest of the style. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and draw in a straight line down here. And then another column of wood, so another beam. Lovely. And then this top area is almost done. We just need to put like a cross in of the window. Lovely. And then from there, we can just start drawing in straight lines. Now, if you want to save yourself some time, you can go up to your actions and go to Canvas, Drawing Guide, and turn it on. Edit the drawing guide and just set the grid size to 500, as we always do, and hit done. The grid size doesn't really matter. It's more that we can now go to the layer and tap on it and add the drawing assist. And you still get your chunkiness of your lines, but now you don't need to worry about drawing in straight lines. Like as you're drawing, you can go ahead and just simply sort of draw in your beams and all the wood that's going to sit up here. I'm going to go vertical with the wood up here. And I'm going to leave a little bit more of a gap away from that central column. In fact, if anything, I'll just shadow that central column a tiny bit more on both sides just to thicken that up. And then I'll just continue creating lines all the way down. They don't always have to be like perfect in terms of the gap between each other or nor the weights either, but that should have just saved you a little bit of time. And when you zoom out, you've got a lovely amount of sort of solid wood shaping in there. Now we'll go back to the layer and we'll tap on it and just turn off the drawing assist. We don't need it on for a second. We are going to draw in the window though. That window, you want to kind of draw in some more beams. So we're going to start off with a horizontal beam just underneath the one that we just created. And then we'll just sort of block that in at the top. I want to go ahead and create another horizontal beam a little bit lower. And then I'll have to leave a gap because I've got my my pole there for the decking. And this is why, again, you should always start at the back first, but I wanted to get that just that guide line in for the decking. From there, we can then go ahead and draw in a column on the left-hand side and then leaving gaps in between. Lovely. Let's do the same over here. A little bit of a column on that right. And then we want to draw in another one in the center of this window as best as you can. So like a little bit like that. Then take a look and maybe just sort of do it again and then shift it off to the left or right a bit more. And then it's okay if it's slightly left-sided, that's no problem. In fact, I might even just redo it again, just to triple check I get it way over towards that left-hand side more so, because based off of the perspective, that window might start to get a little bit crushed. And then for the window, we're not even going to draw like beams, we're just going to draw in like straight lines, just weighted lines to the window. And then another one, of course, down the window, like so, and another one down this window as well. Lovely. So we've got our window in there, that's looking great. And from there, we can then go ahead and maybe thicken up the underside of this line here, because we want to also bear in mind we want to add shadows. We'll also thicken up a line under there too. So it's underneath that beam, a little bit of an extra shadow underneath here. So you are creating shadows as you go. We're just trying to keep them to a minimum just for a second. And I'm going to shadow just the right side of the window at the top too. There we go, that's that done. Then I want to add some more sort of logs here. So I'm going to draw in straight lines sort of up here. I want to draw one and then I want to draw them in manually because I don't want them all being straight and too perfect. And if anything, this is meant to be a shadowed area. So you can see that a lot of those lines are touching and that's perfect because I want them to mainly be in the shadow. So I'll just shave that edge off up here using the eraser. And basically any one of these gaps here now that are showing with the white, that's just going to be where the light is catching on the underside of this roof panel. And if anything, I could be a bit more aggressive and just go right under this first beam, which is this white line here, and then let everything else underneath just be a lot darker and a lot thinner. As long as you've got lines that indicate the kind of movement and the flow of the roof, you're good to go. Like here, I could darken this one up even more, this final line, darken up in that triangle as well, and you should start to see a little bit of a kind of casted shadow almost. Now at the top over here, I'm just going to use my eraser and just trim this. I'm going to add in another beam line here all the way down. There we go, so that's going to be like a fascia almost. And then we're going to start moving over to the right hand side where we do have yet another window, so we can just draw in like a rectangular shape. Keep it simple for a minute, so just a rectangular shape. And with this one, we could probably just keep it very, very simple, where the only thing we'll do is maybe just create like a lip on the bottom edge. And then again, we'll just do a straight line down the middle, horizontal line across, and then maybe even just make it so that it's slightly thicker in the middle, separating two windows. And then you can just shadow underneath here as well, just to give yourself that bulk that you might need. And then tell you what, we will match up to the other one. We will just create like a little bit of a kind of block at the top here, just for consistency across both of them. Now this side over here is going to get split into two. We are going to go ahead and sort of draw in like a horizontal bit of wood across the bottom. So I want to do like logs that are horizontal to one another, just to get us up to that kind of height. And then from this point onwards, by the way, I'm not an engineer, so you know, you'd never build one like this. It's just more for my aesthetic that I want to kind of portray. I want to just create all of the vertical ones in here, and then underneath the window I can just create very simple repeating lines. We'll draw in another one down here too. And then probably just underneath this roof, we just want to sort of add in a very thick dark line on the wood. So you don't want it to overhang on the rear there. You just want to go ahead and just shadow basically underneath the roof there, like so. Now we've drawn in all the wood here. We might as well also finish off the wood features at the front here as well. So we're just going to draw in vertical lines down. So find a kind of distance that you're happy with. I'm just going to thicken out this line just a teeny tiny bit more, just so it stands off from the rest. And then these lines here that I'm going to create, I'll just make sure that they're super thin. They don't even have to go all the way top to bottom perfectly. And as long as you kind of keep like a fairly consistent kind of gap, you're good to go. Now, of course, we're going to be able to define things a little bit more so once we get into the actual detailing phase in terms of colouring. So you can bring stuff back out of your design later. You don't have to fill out the entirety of the whole area as well. You can leave it a little bit more simple like this. Now, we do want to go ahead and, as you can see from the guide, create a bit of a horizontal kind of beam. Now, based off of my window there, I'm going to make it ever so slightly lower than what I've got on the guide. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in a beam that's going to go horizontal across here and connect to this pole. And then I'll create another horizontal line that goes across. Now, just to separate that, we go to our eraser and we just trim the inside area there, which brings that whole beam out towards the front and makes life nice and clear and obvious as to what we're trying to do. Now we're going to connect it to there as well. So we're going to go all the way across, a little bit of a kind of slightly higher edge on the right hand side. And then I'm going to go all the way across as it connects into there. I'll just sort of connect that at the end and then I'll just trim the inside. So let me just erase from here. I'll let you pause it as well, if just in case you need to marry up to that. But that's what we're going for. So make sure to pause if you need it. From there though, we can go ahead and go back to our brush and start sort of shadowing perhaps underneath the property. So just a big chunky shadow under there. We will go ahead and create like casted shadows off from our decking. The decking itself, of course, will cast a shadow as well. So you can, once you've done your pole sort of shadow going backwards a little bit, you can then just kind of create a horizontal line where you think that the decking shadow would come in. And maybe the shadow gets a little bit thinner on the right, just shadowing in underneath. So you can't see the decking, it's this line here, this black line. So you're kind of looking at it to the point where we just about can't see the decking. And just to make it super clear, let's maybe just shadow this in as well, or thicken it up. So it's very clear that there is something flat there, but it's just simply facing us. Now, that's the majority, honestly, of the sort of tutorial work done. The rest of it now is just sort of making our way further back in the design. So we'll just go ahead and sort of shadow a little bit behind the property, like in towards that groove that I created of the land. You know, its shadow just lives back here. That's lovely. I like that a lot. I'm just going to take a look at it and make sure you zoom all the way out, because you can get lost in all those kind of slightly uneven lines and everything like that, like when you're zoomed in all the way here. I'm just shadowing behind that column there, just to again bring it out a little bit more. But when you zoom all the way out, it looks really nice, it looks really sharp, it looks great. Now from there, we also then want to go ahead and just bring this line up towards the side of the house and let that land just continue up and out at the very top up here as well. So you can now see the entirety of the land that that little house sits on. Now, part of this layer here is actually also going to be some trees that sit in behind. This is probably going to be one of the quirkiest sort of sets of trees that we'll ever make on the channel, because based off the fact that we just want to create line work and color it in, they're just going to be these kind of squiggly sort of lines that just kind of go and kind of create like the outlines, sort of general outline of a tree, like just as simple as that. And I know that looks super quirky, but that just matches up to today's style a little bit. And I want to always try on my channel to, just kind of show that, styles can be all over the place and you can have all sorts of different things that you like to draw. Like maybe I could draw in perhaps like a slightly more detailed one here, where the wiggles and squiggles kind of match up and they kind of flare out as if they're like branches and stuff. And you could just repeat that if you wanted to. Maybe I could go ahead and add in like a little bit more detail here by just erasing again and just creating like a little kind of squiggle. I'll do the same just on the right hand side, just to try and give it a little bit of flavor. And then they can just be a little bit more simple at the same time. I can have a blend and a mix of just very, very simple trees. There's so many styles in art. There's so many ways that you might find it comfortable to create like scenes and life and everything like that. So you don't have to draw it sometimes like super, super detailed. Draw what makes you happy and what you're comfortable with. There's always something else that you can try and do to make life a bit easier. And, sometimes that's just making things simpler. So I'm just going to add in like a few little sort of zigzag down, and that's all I'm going to go for. So feel free to pause it as well at this point for this area. That area is all done now. We're then going to go ahead and create another new layer and drag it underneath. So we will end up with like 3 layered areas to our design. The next one is going to be our mountain. You can see roughly the kind of shape that I want to curate at the top here. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to sort of bring my pen down and then just let that kind of run out over here on the right hand side. I don't want it to connect. I want a little bit of a gap. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and create the other side of the mountain. And that one's just going to sort of swoop down off to the left hand side. Now that one's got a little bit too much of a sort of drop in it. I don't want it to sort of drop in too much. I want it to kind of gradually fall away. And then our mountain here is going to be really, really simple. And likewise, it's also going to have a forest in front of it as well. So let's draw the forest in first, because then that will give us a guide as to what to aim for. Now, because we're slightly further back than these trees that we're about to draw in need to be even more simple. Now check out the horizon line. You can't see this bit of the horizon because this tree's in the way. So all I want you to do is just behind your tree here, if not slightly off to the right, in fact, just draw in a straight line across and pop one finger on the screen just to draw in your horizon. Don't connect it to this land. Have a little bit of a gap on either side. So I'll just trim the edge over there and I'll trim the edge over here. That's your horizon line. And then from there, you can start to work in some trees against this kind of guideline that I've provided. So these trees here can just be like lots and lots of kind of sharp, pointed kind of triangular shapes here, and just make your way across. Make sure you try and keep your trees to a smaller scale. They do not need to be super detailed. And then if you've drawn quite a few like I've done there with the kind of upside down V shapes, eventually just decide to hold down and continue your line and create like a bit of a wiggle, and that's perfect. You can create like a wiggly line like this, and then you can run off a wiggly line from there too, to kind of show like how the forest is like completely flowing almost down towards the water's edge down here. So like that's all the tops of the trees, and just creating like a little bit of a forest like to it. And then you can just go ahead and create like additional kind of wiggles and lots of sharp spiky kind of shapes to them, and then let go, and then maybe draw in some more individual trees with the V-like shapes, and then you can just let go again, and then maybe draw in like another wiggly line. Lots and lots of wiggles and wobbles, and let that kind of just flow out towards the right hand side, just like, there we go. Get in then close to your house, don't go too close, a little something like this, and that's it. And then just in there you can go ahead and maybe draw in like a couple of additional wiggles and stuff like here inside the shape, just upside down V shapes. That's all we're trying to create, just to create a very, very dense forest. Please let me know in the comments down below, especially once you've finished, do you like this style? Because I really enjoy it. I think it's really, really fun. As you make your way further back, things get a little bit finer and stuff, and it's just a simple way of drawing, and it looks really bold. And also, once we get done with the mountain, I'll show you also what else you can do with today's design as well. So the first thing you want to do is once you get to the top of the mountain, create a ridge line. Now a ridge line is where you separate left side and right side basically. So I'm just going to go ahead and just create like a ridge line that runs down here, and then it kind of flows off and then sort of smooths out. One thing to bear in mind, when you're at the top, all your lines want to be really jagged, ignore that line. But then as you make your way further down, I'll show you now, you can go ahead and create like really smooth lines, because typically what happens is as the mountain starts to get lower down, the lines tend to get smoother because the lines have been flattened, and those lines obviously indicate the land. So the land is of course flattening, it's not quite as sharp anymore, so it just smooths out as it just rolls away off to this right hand side. And you can run lines off of that line as well, you don't have to just do one singular line, but notice how they're smooth down here and then they're starting to get a little bit sharper as I make my way up. And then I can pick a point here, especially if you've got like a little upward point in your line, you can just run off another line. There we go, off from this little spike. From there, we can go ahead and also, maybe introduce like another one off to the right hand side here, followed by like just a line in sort of empty space. Let that kind of run out over here. Keep it simple, don't add too many. Take a look for how many I've drawn in as well. That'll really help you. I'll run one line like down here, down towards there, and then as it starts to get a little bit lower down, I'll take over and just create like a really smooth line as it makes its way further down into the scene. And then I'll just sort of try and create like a bit more of a break off at the top up here with some more jagged lines perhaps, really kind of creating some shapes like so. So that is literally all we need to do to create a mountain. Smooth lines at the bottom, nice and pointy and sharp towards the top. Now from there, we are done. Look at your scene. Turn off your drawing guide as well. You don't even need that on anymore. And turn off the actual guide as well, because you equally don't need that on anymore. This is your scene. And at this stage, to be honest with you, you can have a level of creative freedom that you can do whatever you want. Because at this point, you may just want to keep your line work at the top. The simple premise is you create a new layer and drag it underneath your line work and colour underneath your lines. And you can use any brush that you like, any single brush that you like. Mess around with different brushes. However, of course, I have one in mind that we're going to use, and that is going to be in the paints section, and it's going to be this brush here. It is the Lily Dale, and that is one of the new brushes in the paint section. So it's in the new library. Again, I've shown you earlier how to get to here. You want to use the Lily Dale. If you're using the previous version of Procreate, I urge you just to update to get the latest brushes anyway, but use one of the paint brushes. So we're going to use Lily Dale. I'm going to tap away. Size-wise, it's going to fluctuate all the time. Now, I want to start at the beginning. So I've created a new layer. I'm going to drag it up and underneath my line work here on the left-hand side. From there, you can go ahead and start colouring it in. So we're going to go to our colours. We've got a few ground colours that we're going to introduce, and that's going to start off with this colour here. It's the middle of the first column. Brush, you can make it a bit bigger. Now this brush I've purposely picked because it gives you that kind of streaky, kind of painterly look, almost a bit markery as well. But with this brush, you can still layer colour on top of it, and it doesn't just continue to get darker like some of the new brushes tend to do. Notice how I've just chucked a little bit of colour underneath my grassy blades, and that's it. Now don't forget, you are underneath your line work, so you don't need to worry too much, but you do want to make sure obviously your colours aren't running into other shapes. So with a 7% now, I can get into this gap here. Let's just be a little bit more careful, and you just want to fluctuate your brush size just so you can get in the gaps. That's it. That's the only reason I'm changing my brush size. So I'm changing my brush size here because I can just get into these tighter little sort of spaces down here. Add in like a white, get rid of that white, should I say. Get right into here. There we go. And you don't want your colours to be fully solid either. Like if you've got any sort of white streaks in there, don't worry about it, leave them, because we've got more colours to layer in anyway, so it's perfectly fine. Then I'm going to make my brush size a bit bigger, continue up and into this space. Obviously, we've got the edge of the land, and that's a little bit further back, that piece of land. So I'll just blend in towards the base of that little grassy tuft. And the same here too. I'll just kind of blend around the top edge of it. There we go. So it's kind of softer there. And then I'll do the same over here, and I'll just make sure I just chuck in the colour up here, in behind that bit of grass, blending that in. Lovely. And so we've got a little bit of white space in there. We can then go to the bottom of the same column, so the bottom of the first column, and start colouring in with some additional tones. So you can streak in some of these lovely, more like mustardy-like tones in the ground. If you run into a shape though, don't stress, it's fine. You just want to layer in some color, especially up here towards the edge. You want the kind of dark tone to sit in this bottom kind of space up here, and down here, shall I say, and then these brighter tones way up here towards the edge of the land. In fact, I'll even connect them together. Add in a few little tufts and taps and scuffs here and there. Now your land will get a little bit brighter, but we're going to do that in a second. We want to focus now on the stones, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this colour here. It's the middle of the third column, and your stone here, you can just chuck the colour in into here. Obviously bear in mind we've got our grassy tuft above, below, so let's just go ahead and fill that in. Lovely. Then if we go to our colours, we've got the bottom of the same column, so bottom of that third column. Bring that scale down just a little bit, and then you can start to sort of bring in some highlights on the top edge and use some of your lines and shapes that you've created, and go up to the top edge. So basically you want to have the highlight either slightly underneath a crack or right up against the edge there. So for example, I could add in like a little bit of lighter tone here too. And that's probably quite a lot of highlight, but I'll leave it for a minute, I don't mind it. But that's kind of the premise that you want to go for, plus the option then of going to the top of the third column and just emphasizing your shadows a bit more as well. So you can maybe get in there and sort of darken up like towards the bottom or underneath a crack again, or just run in like a patch of something throughout, make it kind of fun and cartoony. Let's then go ahead and let's grab the bottom, of the first column, because I just want to tighten that up to the edge of this shape a bit more. And once we've done that, I want to show you then the grassy blades. So we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the middle of the second column. And this is what we want to do. We just want to, in our grassy blades, especially towards the bottom, start off by creating lots of flicks. So brush size is around about 6%. I'm then going to drop it to 4 and create some grassy flicks upwards. You're all on the same layer, don't forget. So, what you draw now is on top of the ground. Of course, you wanted to get the ground in first so that you can then get the grassy blades in. So lots of red little flicks. Then go to your colors and grab the top of the second column. And this is going to be your brighter tone. So this is where you now want to maybe either think about making your brush size a bit smaller, maybe like a 3%. And just towards the top edge, especially of like the blades, you can create some lovely vibrant like little flicks in here. And if you've got any gaps, try and fill them in. So get rid of the white tones. And don't be afraid to also go back to your previous tone as well, like your darker red. But ultimately, you should end up with like a little bit of kind of like reddy kind of grass here. This does have a bit of a autumnal, albeit very kind of loose feeling, especially at the bottom here with this grass. So a little bit like that, and then go back to the middle of that second column, overlap it with some more darker tones as well. So you end up with that, especially towards the bottom, you end up with that lovely dark base to it. And then I'll also go ahead and go to my colors and grab the color. Let's go top left of the palette, but we want to definitely bring the opacity down to like 33%. Keep your pressure nice and light. And then just towards the kind of base down here, it may take a few layers to come in. So let's just go ahead and make the opacity a bit bigger. You just want to sort of just shadow in a little bit around like the base of the grass, and also the making sure that you do just around the base of your rock as well. So like a little bit more of a shadow down here, streaking it in across the ground, just making sure it's nice and dark in behind, and a couple more streaks across. Now we've done the rock in this grass because now you know what to do for the rest of it, and we're going to do it together anyway, but I'm just making sure you know kind of what it is that is expected that we need to be doing at this bottom area. Now the only exception is the fact that we also need to go ahead and add in some little brighter tones in here. So I'm going to go bottom of the second column, and in my land I'm going to make sure my opacity is back up again. I'm going to go to around about say 10% brush size. I'm just going to sort of start streaking in some more vibrant orange in here. I'm going to wiggle that through, especially over towards like the rear, where I imagine that the light is landing on this area of land a little bit more. So I'm just going to streak in some areas here, maybe a little bit down here in a more vibrant, punchy orange tone. I'm not worried about running into the white area. That's perfectly fine just for a second. There we go. Just making sure that the land has like a few more sort of variation in colours and brightness. Getting that top edge a little bit more punchy. Maybe a little bit in there too. I don't want to go too heavy, but it's just about colouring it in. Let's do the rest of the rocks then. So let's go back to our colours. Let's then grab the middle of that, middle of the third column, colour these in, and these are all one shape, so I don't need to worry about it too much. I can just go left to right, all through them. Bring the brush size down once you need to get into some tidy, tighter edges. Colouring it in. Now, of course, you could use the colour drop feature, but I don't really want to. I don't want to have to keep jumping between that, in and out, in and out. Can't really be bothered, to be honest with you. This is all pretty straightforward enough to do, and you know, we are meant to be drawing at the end of the day. We don't always have to use the tools just because they're there. Now, I'm always a sucker for using a tool just to try and save time, but you know, sometimes we just want to draw. So let's get that in there. Now, we do have some additional sort of cooler tones over there on the right hand side as well, which we'll try and integrate in just a second. Now, bearing in mind where we are, we're also on this layer here too, so we are going to go ahead and colour this rock in. Let's do that, colour that in as well. Lovely stuff. Try not to leave any white gaps where possible. And then let's see if we can get back into some of these. You're always able to touch things up afterwards, so you don't stress too much. Let's go to our colours and grab the lighter tone, bottom of the third column, and start chucking in some highlight. I definitely want some highlight over here on this particular rock. Like, I want this area here to have some good top heavy lighting. There we go. Definitely a lot heavy on this top edge over here. I'm going to come across this edge, up through there, and then a little bit of bright tone on that edge at the very top. Definitely a nice bright sharp edge over here. That could be nice and colourful. Probably a little bit more light running in here too. And then break that up. Maybe this one over here just gets the tiniest dribble of highlight. Maybe it doesn't get too much, and that's fine. We can have a little bit of a slightly different look to it. We can go to our colours and we can grab the top of the third column for our shadowish tone here. So you can darken up kind of the bottom here, like where these two start to get really close to each other. I can just shadow in there, just creating like a generic kind of shadow. A little bit around the bottom too, a little bit of a shadow under there, and then maybe a little bit over there on the right hand side, a little bit under there too, a little bit on these little guys as well. That's fine. And if anything, you could even use this colour to kind of shadow around the base of them as well. So like you can just wiggle your pen along here. That one is on the opposite side. That's over that side, so we don't need to do that. It's in the water almost. A little bit of a shadow around the base here. Make it nice and streaky, make it nice and fun. We'll add some highlight to these little guys though. So we'll go to the bottom of the third column. Bring your brush size down. By the way, if I ever go too fast in these videos, you can slow me down in the YouTube player. Just go ahead and tap on the screen, go to the settings cog in the top right and playback speed. Just slow me down, fit your pace. There we go. Now we do want to go ahead and add in the grass again. So let's go to our colours. Let's grab the dark red in the middle of the second column there. And just like before, we're going to go ahead and darken it up. Now I want to get really tight to the rock because of course this grass is right in behind. So if I can just try and create like an outline of red here, just to triple check I don't interfere. I can then go slightly larger with like a 5%, block in the red. Lovely. And then let's go smaller again, like 3%, and create grassy blades, flicking them up. Scribble your pen if you want to, just to literally just create like a bulk of red. Lots and lots of flicks. And then let's do the same here too. Now, based off of the fact that we've added in this grass and it looks like it's fairly large in size, which I'm all for, we might have to actually shadow the top of the rock perhaps. Maybe this is casting a shadow in behind. Let's have a look in a second. Let's switch the color then to the top of the second column. And again, just a few more little blades. These ones are a little bit less easy to see because we've added in the bright orange compared to down here. So they'll more be apparent in like the actual bundle of grass. And then just like before, feel free to switch back if you need to your previous color. We are just going to get this little bit of grass in as well. So middle of the second column again. Let's get this red in here. A little bit of a wiggle, and then perhaps just like a few little sort of streaks underneath it to create a shadow. I will create some red blades, so like a 3%. A couple of little flicks here and there. And especially the fact that this is going to kind of get very, very close to this rock. So you kind of want to keep your size a little bit shorter here because you're not going to be able to see it too much. So I'll grab the top of the second column now and create the blades more so off to the right hand side. Make the brush size a bit smaller and press really firm perhaps. Just adding in some more flicks and that's it. That's all we need to do. Just a little bit of a rough up of the edge. I'm then going to go to my colours and we're going to just grab a little bit of this yellow in the middle of the fifth column. brush size about 5 or 6%. And I just want you to go back over your orangey tones here and just add in a little bit more of this brighter yellowy tone right up here in towards like the very edge of the land, and then just like a few streaks again in between, so you end up with oranges and reds, etc., but this more vibrant tone is right up on that top edge. We need to make our way back, so we need to go to the top of this same column, in fact, top of the 5th column. Let's go to our brush size, about 17%. I can just absolutely chuck the color in here, and I can go between my tree as well, that's no problem. Of course, you want to be nice and sort of careful here as you get towards the land in front, because we're all on the same layer. We're going to just bring our colour down along here, along that edge, in behind, make sure it's just nice and tidy, in towards that rock, colouring it in. Any little white gaps we can get rid of right up against the edges. There we go, lovely jubbly. And then we can go to our colours and grab the middle of the same column, so middle of the same column, and then you can create with like a 7 or 8% brush size, like just slightly brighter edge up here, and kind of show the flow of the land. Bearing in mind, of course, don't interfere with your tree, because your tree has its own space in a second and own colours as well. So you're just working towards the right hand side of the tree, just trying to create some flow down towards the rock there. And then go to your colours, and you've got a slightly brighter colour again just at the bottom of that same column, and you can just work that in right on top of those yellows, but a bit more towards the top edge almost, so like a little bit up here, a little bit brighter, maybe even like really bright in there, just kind of a blend of a few different tones. Let's get the tree coloured in, so let's go in fact to the middle of the first column. You want to make sure that you're then colouring in the centre of your tree. Don't go too low down, because the bottom's going to be mainly shadow. It's just the actual tree in here we want to be colouring in. Try not to spill out behind the lines as well. Of course, you want to go up this other branch that we created as well. Bringing the brush size down, I can press quite firm, and that's nice and comfortable. So I'm about 4%. Brush size sometimes isn't always apparent for me to tell you, because it doesn't really matter. It's just, you know, you're colouring in, you'll need a brush size that you can colour in with. It's just as simple as that. There we go. Nice and colourful. Let's then go to our colours and go top left of the palette, slightly darker tone. Well, slightly darker, it's the actual darkest tone. Brush size around about that 12% mark. I want you just to kind of blend down, and as you get towards the bottom down here, just kind of chunk out this shadow down here, and then kind of allow the shadow to kind of flow down and in towards the land. So like you can see me just exaggerating the tree, and then just kind of letting it kind of blend out with some light pressure. So it swoops down, but the shadow's on that left-hand edge. Although the light source is right behind it, the majority of this would end up being silhouette. So I can maybe run my shadow, in fact, down both sides, but just leaving a little bit of a streak of that kind of brown in the middle. On this branch here, I'm just going to sort of darken up in this gap, and then darken up kind of the bottom edge of it all the way up to the top. So you end up with this little bit of streak of the brown still showing, and a little bit of the dark tone. Now I have spilt out slightly, and if we tap on our eraser, we can just go ahead and sharpen that up. It's in a pretty easy space for me to do so, and I can zoom out. Now we're going to go ahead and work on the tree, but I do need to go ahead and create a new layer and drag it underneath our colour work, because we want to slot it right at the very back. I'm going to go to my colours, and I'm going to grab the top of the 4th column. Now you want to find a brush size that you like the scale of. That's probably a little bit too small. I reckon around about that kind of 25%. And we want to just create, with lots and lots of taps and patches and varying pressures, your cluster of your autumnal tones. So we're going to get loads of red in behind here, tapping away. Don't do too much. You know, you've got other colours that we're actually going to layer on top of here in a second. So at the minute, it's just about tapping, pushing in random areas and directions to create tufts of autumnal tone in here. So we're going to get some branches that are just like full, and add in that colour all the way down that left hand side. So a little something like this. Then go to your colours and grab the middle of the same column. I might go a tiny bit smaller, about 22%. And just on top of some of those, where you feel like you want to, you can put in these more vivid orange tones. So you want to kind of think that you want to leave space for dark reds to live. So like maybe, for instance, I'll add in like the orange up here, but I'll leave these reds in this area here perhaps. In fact, I'll maybe add some in there, but I need to find a space to kind of leave, and maybe that's like back there instead. So these orange tones can live at the very top of the scene, maybe a little bit off to the edge as well. So I'll tap in there. I'll go to my colors and I'll grab the bottom of the fourth column and we'll do the same. And this one's a slightly more yellowish tone. So you want to keep making sure you're tapping and making sure you're kind of not smudging too much. And you want to, because you want to be kind of layering on the color on top of itself. Now, don't be afraid to also go back to your colors and grab the top red again, top of that fourth column, and break up those tones as well. So you can get in there and just tap away, just making sure that it's nice and patchy and it's nice and painterly. So you've got like a little bit of that kind of orangish yellow tone starting to emerge on the outside edge. So a little something like this. Now from there, we want to go ahead and actually go to our layers right at the top and create another new layer and repeat that exact same process. So top of the fourth column, but just on this branch here that I introduced. So basically I want to put like a particular branch here just in front of our tree. So you can see it covers up like a bit of the tree. Then I'll go to my colors and repeat the steps. Middle of the fourth column, couple more taps on that area. It doesn't matter if you can't dictate sort of what's in the front and what's at the back anymore because of the colors all sort of blending in. That's not a problem. You just want to keep repeating the same style. Go to your colors, bottom of that same column, and then add in the slightly brighter, the yellowish tone on the edge. Keep tapping that in. Maybe make the brush size a bit smaller. Maybe just to add in like smaller little patches of yellow throughout. You know, dance that paint in there. There we go. And then you should end up with like a branch a little bit closer. Now don't forget, if you hold down on your eraser, you switch it to the same brush, which is now the paint brush, and you can just like chip into there as well, like literally just tap away just to kind of break up those shapes if you want to. So like you're erasing with a similar kind of style and pattern. So I can just chop away into there. Likewise, I could go down to the layer in behind and start chipping away at some of the edges. If I feel like they're a little bit too fluffy and rounded, perhaps I can just, you know, break them up, giving them a little bit more of an interesting look to them. So there's lots of things that you can do slightly later on, but for now, just leave it like that with that kind of painterly like shape to it. Again, you're going to have so much time towards the end of this tutorial and space in order to be more creative and just, you know, chip away at some bits and make things a little bit more refined. So I'm just going to break that up a tiny bit like so. Right, let's go ahead and move on though. Let's move on to the sky. That's really important. So we're going to create a new layer and drag it all the way to the very bottom. Now it might be important at this stage to also grab the top 4 layers and group them together and just rename the group and just call it 1 on the keyboard. That means that that's your foreground. That's the first layer. That's the first stack of content. Let's go down to this layer right at the very bottom. Let's go to our colors and grab the blue in the bottom right of the palette. You want to then go ahead and make your brush size probably around about, it's fairly larger than that. It's probably around about 60-70%. Go along your horizon. Don't worry about your little hut there, and just go left to right, filling in that top area of your scene. Then go to your colors and grab the top right of the palette, and then a little bit in behind your mountain. You want to create painterly like streaks if you can in your sky. That'll look fantastic, especially if you can get some really lovely, quite defined streaks in there. But primarily towards the bottom, you want your brighter tone to live. And then you can go ahead and go to your colors and go to the middle of the far right column. And with a brush size a lot smaller, you can start creating circular, rounded, fluffy like cloud shapes that are going to have that little bit of a yellowish tone to them. So you can tap and get some quite sharp lines, or you can be really light and create some fluffy shapes. So, and softer shapes almost. So softer right up here, right at the edge of your scene. And then maybe like a few little sort of little streaks out from there, a little bit of a push left and right. You know, just a few little areas in here, just in your sky, just to kind of break up the blues. There we go, just really soft like clouds. And because we've not got anything over here anyway, and the tree's in the way, you don't need to worry about doing it. The only thing you may want to do is just put some like little streaks in here, just behind your mountain, ever so slightly with some yellowish tone. So that's your sky. You then want to go ahead and swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor, flip it vertically and drop it down into the water below. However, we want to move this quite a lot higher, so I'm going to move freeform and squish it down, push it up a little bit, like so, and then tap on my cursor when I'm done. And then down here, we're going to go to our colors, we're going to grab the top of the second column from the right. Same brush, about 60% in size. I'm just going to go left to right because I want those kind of bluish green tones right down here in our water, right beside us, maybe even like a little bit trailing in on this left-hand edge. You're going to get rid of all the whitish tone if you can manage it. Streak your way through it, and then eventually it will just kind of all kind of make sense. Like it won't have that little white gap anymore. It will just easily sort of show that there's a little bit of a darker tone. Maybe it's the tree casting a shadow down into this water, but you end up with a little bit more of that kind of greenish tone. And you can always switch to the blue again, bottom right of the palette if you want to, and bring your size down to like 17% and get some like little streaks running over that greenish tone, because now we've filled it in. As long as you kind of create some more streaks in here, you'll end up with a lovely kind of painterly look to your ground down here, or your water, sorry, should I say. There we go, a little something like this. Let's then go ahead and work on the cabin area here. Now this is the hour mark roughly, so if you want to take a break, this is an absolute perfect time to do so, and you can come back to this particular stage. However, if you're powering through with me, let's carry on and get into this area over here. So we're going to go to our colors. We are going to go ahead and grab this color here, top of the fifth column. You want to go to your layers. Let's create a new layer and drag it up and underneath our cabin on the right there. First thing we want to go ahead and do is just get this base tone in for the land. Now the land runs all the way up to here, and of course it runs in behind our cabin as well, so you don't want to colour that in. You just want to colour in the land area. Bring your brush size up and down depending on where you're drawing, so I can get close to the cabin, that's not a problem. Just like a little bit in here. Colour that in. Let's bring that size down, about 3%. Get that into there, lovely. And then let's bring that into here, and then we're going to go across here too. And we want to just avoid all of those rocks that we created. It doesn't matter if you technically do colour in them, because in a minute you can just layer in the green anyway, or the grey, so it's not really a big deal if you do. We'll go underneath here. Don't worry if you go into some of your little your legs there of your balcony and porch, whatever you call it wherever you are in the world. I think a porch is an American style term, I believe, more so than we would say out over here, should I say, in the UK. Anyway, let's get that, colour that in. Again, I'm not fussed if it runs into that column too much. As long as I stay within the general lines of the actual layer, that's fine. 2%. Now here, I'm just going to go ahead and just make life a little bit easier and just run straight down, and then just connect all this together, and I'll have to just make sure I bring my columns back out into play in a second. So let's just bring that in here, colour that in, lovely. Let's zoom back out, awesome. I love seeing this stage where you just drop all that colour in and then you see it come to life. Let's go to our colours. Let's then go ahead and do the stones as well. So we're going to go to the middle here of this column, so it's the middle of the sixth column. Bring that brush size down to like a 5%, and then we're going to go ahead and just grey in here too. Get a grey running all the way through. Up to the edge of your line work. And colour it. Now you can also, at the end of this as well, like spend so much time like refining colours and details. Like it's such a fun tutorial because you've done all the hard work in terms of the drawing part of it. Then once you get to colouring, you can just blend colours together and do all sorts of stuff and really have some fun with it. There we go, we've got our rocks in, and then we're going to go to our colours and grab the top here of the fourth column from the right, and just in behind your trees, your cabin, in the trees, we're going to block in this colour here. I'm going to make sure I come across the roof line there, nice and tidy. Again, not too fussed, because once we colour in the roof, I can get rid of any little overlaps. It's no stress. And then for the trees themselves, once you start to go across this roof line, because they're in kind of like zigzag shapes, you can just do this, right? And you can kind of stay in the lines, or you can let your colour just sort of trickle outwards, like as well. Like being that they're trees, that's pretty straightforward just to kind of try and stay in the line. But if it goes without, I don't think it's a problem with today's style. It's more so that the line work that I'm showing you is like a rough guide and a few details of the tree, but ultimately like the color that I'm adding in right now is the actual shape of the tree. And because this brush has got like a little bit of a jagged edge to it, as you do this, you're actually going to be adding in some really nice kind of jagged edges to the trees as well, like as if they're like adding in lots of little branches as well. So there we go, we've got another colour in here. It's now time to kind of start making our way back to front. So we're going to add some autumnal colours to those trees. We're going to grab this colour here. It's going to be the middle of the fourth column from the right. And then just towards like the left-hand side of your trees, just sort of horizontally dab in and tap in some areas of orange. It's going to be really simple and quick and easy. Just little dabs, because these trees are a little bit further back. So I've got like a 6% brush size. We don't need to kind of worry about and stress about kind of what they look like too much. Like as long as we're getting these autumnal kind of tones in here, but we've got our general shadow tone in here, which we've already done, that dark blue, you're good to go. You know, you can get all these colors in here and then you can just tap in and then go along some of the trees that you created, like in the body of it, like the body of the shape. Like, you know, I can see that I've added in a line here, for example, so I can just dash in a few orangey like lines. They're like horizontal paint strokes, you know, all the way up to the very top. I don't want to blob it in like that. You can do a few like upward ones if you want to, but I think they just get a little bit too, they break up the shape a bit too much. I'm going to go really, really close to the house just so I can add in some like nice tone just above it. Zoom in out. Again, you know, just get some nice autumnal tones. Let's go to our colours and grab the bottom of the fourth column there from the right. And then we can dash in this yellow tone. It's going to get even brighter. Don't do it on every tree. Do it on just a few. Do it in some gaps. Do it on top of the oranges. Everything in between. And just a few little taps here and there. Especially like even over in your shadows, you can just tap in and add in like a little bit of yellow. A little bit. There we go. And then the ones that kind of get a little bit further away, I'm going to bring my opacity down to 46%. I'll barely get any paint stroke. Look, it's not even adding anything. The opacity doesn't even make a difference. I'll have to just do it really lightly. I'll just add in like little dashes of colour. That's all we want to do. Just that little autumnal forest like that. Nice and simple. So now let's go ahead and just add in some colour to the land. So we're going to go middle of the fifth column. We're going to make sure we're still on the same layer, which we are. And we want to add in some highlights where we feel applicable. So around about 6%. On any sort of bank, basically, you're going to go ahead and just layer in some highlight that's coming across from that left-hand side. Maybe a little bit on there too, a little sort of streak there. You can let that highlight kind of run up in behind. There would probably be highlight on the bank in behind here as well. You know, just creating all sorts of lines here to show the kind of flow of the hillside in behind. And just make your way down here, keep life a little bit more easy and simple. You can see I've got a few little lines here and there that are running a slight bit astray, and that's fine. I can fix them in a second. A little bit smaller with the brush size, about 4% now, just to try and just get into some of these little grooves where I need to. Add in the highlight right up to that edge. That's already come to life so much in comparison to what we had before. Just a little bit here. Bearing in mind we also don't want to add in too much just around the right hand side of the property, because we want to make sure that we've got some shadowish tones to be working with, some nice darker tones. We do have brighter tones also to add in as well. We will go to our colours. We'll grab the bottom of the same column, so bottom of the fifth column there. You can add in some slightly sort of, they're a little bit more muted, they're less saturated. And you can just focus that over here on the left hand side especially. And basically layering on top, wherever you feel applicable, on top of those yellowish tones. So we just got like a few little sort of tones in there that are a little bit different. I've got some nice variation as well. Let's go ahead and work on the actual hut. Let's go to our colours. We want to grab the bottom here of the sixth column, and then we're going to just colour in the majority of it. So let's get that brush size a bit smaller, around about 2%. Press a little bit firmer, 2 to 3, just so I can get the line in right up against the edge, just making sure it's all nice and tidy. And this tutorial today is a little bit longer. There's a little bit more detail to be added in certain places, but it is a little bit longer. But sometimes that's just the way it goes. Sometimes you do just need to put some more time in, perhaps, just to get it all as you want it, and create something really cool as well. I hope you like it when you're done. Let's go up here. The roof actually on that right hand side is going to change colour in a second, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. We're just going to get this colour in here, all the way up that edge, and then you can get your brush size nice and big, about 15%. Load in the colour. There we go. This is like your base color. So majority of the time you'll have seen that I'm working with my darkest tone first, and then I'm layering in the highlight on top. Pretty much common practice throughout the whole of this tutorial. So I'm going to go underneath that roof bit there, because that top bit's going to be grey in just a second. And then I'm just going to bring out these poles again, so like 2% if I need to, just to get in those gaps. Layer in the colour, trying to make sure we definitely get that to come back to us. Bringing it back out of the scene, back towards us as we're looking at it. In fact, we're actually going to continue with that same colour. We are going to load in the colour here. Just load this all in. There we go, lovely, nice. Okay, so the hut is done with its colours. Let's go ahead and let's work in some grey tone. So I'm going to in fact go to the top of the 6th column. I'm going to bring that brush size down to like a 3%. First thing I want to go ahead and do though is just add in like a little bit of grey just along the edge at the bottom. I'll add in like a little bit at the top here, and this is just like our shadowish tone, but what we're going to do is just create lots and lots of streaks just running across. So with a 2 to 3% brush size, just running your streaks down, following what would be the flow of the roof. And you can layer in more than this, because I've just made sure I'm just creating enough lines so I can then go back through and do exactly what I'm doing right now, where I can layer in some more additional lines. It's just meant to show flow of the roof, just flowing down towards that right hand side. Rotated the canvas just to make life a little bit easier. And that's it. When you zoom all the way out, it should just be like your roof is reflecting a little bit of that kind of sky tone in there. You could go to like a 3% and just lightly streak back through with a slightly larger brush size to layer in some more colour perhaps, maybe even a little bit more up towards the very top edge. Get rid of a little bit more of the base tone. There we go. And there we go. We've got our right side done. Let's work over here, because this side's actually pretty straightforward, to be honest. We can go to our colours. We actually want to go ahead and add in a shadow to this area. So I'm going to go top here of the 3rd column. I'm actually going to go ahead and create a new layer temporarily and tap on it and clipping mask it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just shadow under here, like by basically just creating like a big dark block. And then in a minute, we're also going to add in some more shadows. So for a minute that can stay exactly like that. We'll come back to that layer. So we're going to utilize that later. Going back down to your main layer with all your color on, we can go ahead and add in some of the brighter tones for the wood shapes. So let's go to our colors. We want to go ahead and grab this color here. It's the bottom of the 5th column. Brush size nice and small, around about 1 or 2%. Let's go up this edge here. And we can also bring out more color later on as well. So don't stress about it being too dark perhaps. So let's get this one nicely coloured in. Let's go ahead and do this like little fascia as well, adding in some brighter tone in this gap. Zooming out, I just want to make sure that's nice and bright, which it is, that's perfect. Let's go down this edge here of our wood. And you're basically now just going back through all of your kind of items, bringing them out. So you're trying to brighten up like pieces that you want to make sure are nice and bright. Based off of shadow, perhaps the light source would only show like towards the bottom of this column here, because the roof would get in the way. Your beams and stuff we can colour in a minute, because of course we want them to be at the front. So let's just go ahead and then just like a 2 or 3%, just try and run through the beams in your house there. So basically every time there's a dark line, I'm just drawing in slightly to the right of it, maybe even overlapping the line slightly as well. That's perfectly fine, to add in every single kind of log. And it just needs to be as simple as this, just very simple brush strokes, varying pressure. Some of them will leave like a lot of dark tone of the original base, kind of that red tone in there. That's fine, don't mind that. Just like randomness of life. We'll add in some of the nicer, brighter tone up here as well, underneath our little window. And then as you get over towards this side again, maybe the roof is starting to sort of get involved a little bit here. So maybe these highlights start to kind of just disappear a little bit on the face there. You kind of just have that dark tone sitting underneath there like so. You want to make sure you zoom in. You want to get your brush size a little bit smaller, like 2%. Let's make sure that these like beams here that we created for our window is nice and vibrant, you know, really quite nice and punchy with the color. And now you've done that, you can then go ahead and work in your columns here. So similar fashion, like down that left hand side, because that's where the bright light source is coming from. Leave a little bit of that kind of red there as acting as a bit of a shadow. just run it straight through here, but like more towards the top edge. Don't worry if you colour in the whole thing, it's perfectly fine. We'll add in another bit there. And then on the rest of the banister as well, out front. Lovely stuff. Now over here, it's not to say you can't add in a little bit here, but keep it really, really, really light, because it's on the side that is pretty much in the shadow. So you can just add in like little sort of scuffs of colour here, and I mean like really, really light with your pressure, so you don't add in too much, and especially back here, just let that kind of disappear, let the colour really fall off. But we are going to try and then get in here now and purposely kind of detail like a little bit more by just adding in some slightly brighter lines where we can press a little bit firmer, make sure we can bring out some of the wood where we want it. We want it ideally to have like a bit of an orangish look to it, not quite so burgundy. The burgundy and the red tone is meant to be the shadows. Zooming out, we've got some nice beautiful colour scheme happening there. We then want to go ahead and switch our colour. We want a slightly more brighter colour in order to add in some tone. So we're going to switch it to this colour here. It's the middle of the third column. And now you can start to really pull them out a little bit more. So you can go up, down this like edge over here, showing the sun landing on this edge here. Likewise up here as well. That brighter tone really will start to pull things out. You can go down this edge over here, showing where the light is really landing. So on these poles, and you can see it's almost got like a bit of a kind of scuffed look to it, the paintbrush at this scale, which is really nice because it will just add in little bits of colour. You can see I'm going around the window frame as well. Just adding in little bits of colour, but not like a ton. And we don't want a ton of colour. We just want to kind of show, you know, highlight certain elements of the building that we want to bring out, which is looking really nice. I'm then going to go ahead and add in a colour for the windows. That is going to be, first of all, the top here of the sixth column. I'm going to just add in that colour in the windows here. And later on, we do have an add layer that we'll add in like across the majority of the entire scene. So you don't need to worry too much at this stage about like if things are a little bit dark still. We're going to have plenty of time just to add in more and more. Oh, that's because we're on one layer. We have to colour it in. We're going to end up with lots of time to add in more and more little details in terms of just emphasising contrast and bringing things out of the scene a little bit more. Just colouring in the window, circular motion just to fill that in. Lovely. That's just going to reflect a little bit of that sky. Now earlier on we created that shadowy layer, so let's go back to the top here of our third column. Let's go back up to that layer that's clipped and let's just shadow in areas that we definitely know we want them in. So like a 4%, you just want like a little bit of a shadow running across here, maybe a little bit on the right hand side of the window, maybe a little bit underneath this beam here just to kind of darken it up and create some depth. And then we can't really see it, but let's just add in a little bit around the window frame and a little bit under there. Maybe a little bit alongside this column to kind of bring out the column a little bit more. And then you should have like recessed and brought out certain elements now of your actual whole scene because you've darkened them up, you've hidden them a little bit. Maybe you could do like a little bit of a shadow across the bottom. And then the only thing I'd probably do is just add in like a little bit more of a shadow along the bottom edge there. Maybe like a bit more of a shadow into here where it kind of recesses into the land a little bit more. But all in all, really happy with that. So then we'll just go ahead and simply pinch the two of them together. Before you do that though, just triple check your opacities and make sure you're happy with it. Maybe it's a little bit too strong, maybe it's a little bit too light. If I go to 60% and then pinch them together, I'm really happy with how that looks. Now let's go ahead and finish off the rocks. Let's go to our colours and grab the top of the sixth column. Brush size nice and small, around about 2%. And let's just add in like a little bright top edge to some of your stones over here. You can add in big fascias if you want, like maybe this one's got loads and loads of light on it. And this one over here, just a little trickle, a little something, maybe on this one too, like on that top edge underneath that dark line. And there we go. We've done all of the land over here, which means we can now actually reflect this as soon as we're happy with it. So just make sure you maybe want to go ahead and grab, for instance, the middle there of the third column from the right and just add in like a little bit of brighter tone with like a 3 or 4% brush size just over here on this edge, right over by I like light source the most. I don't want to add in too much, but just a little trickle. So as I said, we're done. So let's go ahead and actually swipe both of those to the left or left to right and group them together. Rename the group, call it 2, swiping down on the W. Then collapse this down, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one and flatten it. Then open up that layer, just drag it in. You'll have to put it in the middle and then go ahead and grab the bottom layer and move it above so that the new layer we added in is actually the bottom. And then once it's the bottom layer, you want to tap on it and change its blend mode to multiply and bring its opacity down to around about 55%. Grab your cursor, flip it vertically and drag it down. Now, ideally you want kind of the land just to triple check you're kind of all connected. That's fine with the reflection. That looks good to me. So I'll tap on my cursor when I'm done. What we then want to go ahead and do is work on the mountain in the background. So you may want to turn off group number 1 here just to try and sort of clear it out the way. Collapse group number 2 down, and then just like before, create a new layer and drag it underneath the outline for the mountain area. Go to your colors. We want to go ahead and be working in these kind of darkish areas over here. Now we want to go ahead first of all and grab this color here, top of the second column from the right. Brush wants to be around about sort of 17%, I guess, just to get it blocked in. Let that kind of run out to the left. Go underneath your line where possible. And if you want to be nice and quick, you can just run through this and then in a minute, just grab your eraser and just get rid of the edges. It's as simple as that, really. Color that in. You want to go along your horizon line here. So you want to draw in a straight line across and pop one finger on the screen and then just color that in. And as I said, just go ahead and go to your eraser, tap on your eraser, go to inks, and we will use a pen, and we'll use the Liffey brush again. And let's just get rid of this. Get rid of this. Don't worry if you kind of leave any gaps. Again, it all can be tidied up at a later point. Just a little bit like so. Now, from there, we're going to go ahead and make our way onto the mountain and then go down into our foreground. So we're going to go to our colors. We want to go ahead then and we want to start working in the middle of the second column from the right. Go to your brush. You want to switch it to paint still and the Lily Dale. And you want to start working this color in a little bit more so over towards like the bottom edge and like the left hand side. So you're trying to find some of your swooped out lines here, layering in some more of this slightly brighter tone towards the left hand edge and letting that color kind of swoop out here and there. Don't worry about going too high because in a minute we are going to layer in like more snowy like colors. So a little bit this kind of gray tone, mainly over towards that left hand side. Then go to your colors. Let's move to the next tone, which is actually this yellow here, and that is the bottom of the second column from the right. That is then going to live on the left-hand side of your mountain face. So every little bit and those little lines that you created, I've just made the brush size a bit smaller so I can just trickle in behind some of these lines. Don't worry about it too much, about 5% maybe. I can just add in some like much needed kind of bright spots here. And then make sure you're kind of creating like little sort of streaks where possible and leave in like a little bit of that blue just occasionally just to kind of pop through the gap. And then as you get further down, just like let your yellow kind of fade out where possible. I can put a little trickle of it on here perhaps. And let that again just kind of trickle over this side and streaking it out. But definitely over here at the back, you want to blanket that in, let that colour just blend out at the bottom. Highlighting that left-hand side of your mountain there, maybe occasional little yellow streak a bit further down. And then go to your colors. We are then going to move to this color here. It's just beside it. It's basically fully white. And that is then going to live on top of that yellow tone, mainly towards the top edges. And you're going to add in your brightest, snowiest little sort of peak up here. So I'm layering that on top. It does get pretty bulky, if I'm honest, in here. Like you can really layer in the white tone up here and then just let that kind of trickle down onto some of the edges a bit lower down, kind of little streaks and patches and scuffs here and there just to add in like that snow maybe coming down the mountain. And then go to your colors and grab the middle of the third column from the right, and you do the opposite side now with this slightly more muted kind of yellowish tone. So I'm going to just really block this in all the way up to the very top there. I definitely want to get that peak involved across here. And then let that colour just streak its way down here, definitely in behind your like little ridge line there, leaving a few areas of the blue to sort of pop its head through. I'm going to go to 5% because then I'm just going to sort of work in like just above there, a little bit above this line here too, and then maybe there's like a lot of sort of snow on this side and it just trickles down because it's not facing the sun so it wouldn't melt. A little bit over here. All trickling off from that central kind of point, that little ridge line in the middle. So you get a little something like this, and then maybe the odd little sort of scuff of it a little bit further down, even on the middle parts, to get a little beautiful looking mountain. Then we want to go to our colors and grab the top of that third column from the right, because this is our tree line that's right down here. First thing you want to probably do is just find a mark and then draw across your horizon line there, all the way to the right hand side, and pop one finger on the screen. And then just like before, you want to kind of set your brush size to like a 10% and just do lots of vertical kind of lines to create the tops of all the trees. So I'm just dashing in here, hopefully layering in some color as well, because I don't want all the trees to be exactly the same dark blue. That's fine. I can wiggle it across, like making sure that the bottom's nice and dark, but as I go I can just dash in vertically, and you should end up like literally coloring in. Look at that, all of these like little, the heads, because look at the scuff of the paintbrush. Again, these little lines are just meant to kind of illustrate a few little areas of sort of sharp detail. Doesn't mean that that is the only shape you're allowed to sort of colour in here. So I can just keep dashing all the way up over here, bearing in mind, of course, when we add our foreground in a second back in, you may lose some of this as well. So you don't need to sort of stress over it too much, as long as you've got that lovely sort of dark tone happening there. Now, I do urge you to kind of mess around by adding in a few additional colours should you feel is necessary, like maybe a little bit of this middle of the far left column. You could, with a 2%, just a few light little sort of scuffs. I'm going to go a bit bigger than that. I'm going to go 10% now, and maybe just dash in like some patches of browny kind of orangish tone in here, a little bit maybe over towards this left hand edge, because then it will kind of match up a little bit more towards those trees that we put in behind our cabin. I'm just going to put a few more dark tone in there, and then I'm going to switch in like a brighter tone. Let's go to like the orange over here, that middle of the fourth column from the right. Now, if you want to, just so you can be super, super careful, just create a new layer and tap on it and clipping mask it. And then that way you can scrape these in, and even if they get super saturated and vibrant, we can just tone the opacity down of the layer in a second. So you can just dash in like little areas of orange and leave the dark blue though. 14% brush size. Just dashing in like little areas of orange, more so on this right, because I've got like a swoop down and then a swoop up. And the swoop up would be facing the light source, so I can just make sure I add in like a little bit more over here. Bottom of that fourth column from the right with this slightly more yellowish tone. And again, just sort of dashing in there. A couple of little streaks of this colour. Vertical fashion, dabbing away. And if you're happy with it, you can literally just leave it. Like, don't have to adjust the opacity in any way. But you could just tap on the layer, bring the opacity down just to make sure it's super subtle, and then pinch the two layers together so that I brought mine down to about sort of 60% there. And then bring back in your foreground at the top, number 1. And then that way you can just see if there's any little gap like I've got here. So I need top of the third column from the right, and I just need to colour in that little gap over there. Now, just like before, we're then going to go ahead and we're going to put this in a group. So left to right on both layers and group them together. We then want to go ahead and swipe that group to the left and duplicate it. And either one of them, just tap on it and flatten it into one layer. And then bring that new layer into the group, put it in the middle, and then grab the other layer and move it above. So it's the bottom layer in the group. Change the blend mode from normal to multiply. Bring the opacity down to around about 55% and grab your cursor. Flip it vertically, drag it down. You'll end up with a beautiful little reflection of your mountain in the water. You can see I'm not moving it all the way perfectly down. I don't want to move it so it's like literally like that. Don't want that at all. I want it just a little bit higher, slightly off to the left. I'll tap on my cursor when I'm done. The only thing I need to do is just grab my eraser, and I need my eraser to be like a soft airbrush. Now I can't really find one at the minute, so I just go to basics and this Forester brush, and then just blend out this line here because it interferes with our cabin a little bit. So I'm just going to get rid of that, or any line that I feel interferes. Now I don't want to make like a white gap or anything, so I'm just going to sort of, where possible, just kind of tone that down and get rid of those lines if they interfere. So you should end up with this lovely reflection. Now we can actually go ahead and emphasize the water quite a lot and make this look a lot nicer and tidier. First of all, let's go down to the water layer here that we created. If we go to our colors and we grab the top of the third column from the right, continuing with the paintbrush, so we need to go back and make sure we're using that paints brush. 20%, maybe a bit bigger, probably a lot bigger, 35%. A little bit darker along the edge of the land over here, and kind of just make sure it's got a little bit of a shadow, and then maybe just a little bit more of a shadow along the horizon as well, to kind of blend those dark tones into the water. Now let's actually go ahead and create a new layer. And we need to position this correctly. So we need to open up group number 2. And we want to create this new layer and put it underneath the color work of that layer and underneath the line work, but in front of your reflection. Let's go ahead and go to our drawing guide. Just turn it back on again. I want to triple check we've got the grid, which we do, meaning I can tap on the layer and add the drawing assist. If I then go to my colors, let's go for the bottom of the 3rd column from the right. Our brush wants to go back to the option of pens and that Liffey brush. Size, let's put it at 7%. You can now go horizontal, varying pressures, and you can create lots and lots of little streaks, which now makes this look a lot more like water than it does just a reflection and just like a perfect, mirror. So you can just create all these little streaks through, especially through your dark patches, and lots of them, just running all the way through. You're underneath your foreground over here, so you don't need to worry about that too much. And at the foreground right at the front, go back up to that 15% and create some like much needed kind of larger little dashes in there that get really kind of chunky with the lines. It looks really, really fun. Get some more lines coming in here. And this is where you can also then put like a few lines around this little rock, especially to kind of show how it disturbs the land. I can go down to the smaller size there of 7%, and in the distance just put some little horizontal little dashes. I can't go vertical, or I can't go anything but horizontal or vertical because of the drawing assist. And that means I can also go around the base of this little rock, create some white ripples around it just to show how it is interfering with the water. You can do a couple down like the edge of your land as well, around any rocks. Look at that, it just makes it look so fun. Do a few more around there as well, a little bit around the base of this one. And then that just helps your land just make it definitely look like it just sits among the water. Now you can also go ahead and go to your colors and grab, for instance, the top of the 3rd column, and you could put some slightly darker lines in here as well, which will just add in like a nice sort of split variety between them. So I can just streak in some slightly darker lines here and there, slightly larger brush size again, that 15%, just streak in a few, just trying to make sure it's got some variety, maybe a little bit around this edge of the land, especially around the base of this rock. I could probably just blend that in, to be honest with you. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my drawing guide because there's quite a lot of lines going on, but I can still see my work and it looks really nice. I'm very happy with it as it stands. It's then a matter of fine tweaking, to be honest with you. If we go to the very top of our layers, we collapse everything down and we create a new layer at the top, and we change the blend mode from normal to add. I'm going to bring the opacity down to 30% straight away. I'm going to go back to my highlight color at the bottom of the 3rd column there from the right. And now I can just get into certain elements and just start brightening it up. So I can go along like the edge here of like the rock, for example. I can always bring my opacity down with the brush as well if I purposely want to just make sure I get things a little bit lighter here and there. I can add in like little scuffs of lighting just on the edge of the rocks. Don't add it in everywhere. You don't need to add it absolutely everywhere, but maybe like a little bit on this surface up here of this rock. That looks really nice. The best place that you can add it though is over here in your building. So you can go, for example, along like this line here. Don't forget you're not clipped or underneath any dark lines. So try and avoid drawing on the dark lines where possible. Again, you can bring out lots of those elements. You can get into your wood lines here, add in some streaks here and there, and really kind of hopefully bring out a little bit more of those tones, making your cabin a little bit more vibrant, almost a bit more yellow at the same time. So I'm just trying to draw on top of those kind of peachy, orangey tones, try and bring out the wood a little bit more. It's looking a lot sharper. That looks awesome. Then we'll bring the opacity right down to like a 15%, and we'll just add in some like diagonal kind of lines across the glass here, just to try and hopefully show that kind of glassy look to it. Maybe a little sort of streak or two down in that window as well, just to give it a little bit of shine. And as I mentioned, you can then go ahead and create another new layer at the top. Go to your colors and grab the same color as your line work, so top left of the palette. If you put your opacity back up to 100% and keep the same brush as we did earlier, it's now up to you how much you want to detail. So I can create some branches running through here, for example. I can start to create little squiggles and wiggles, especially like along the edge of the tree. Now, I'm just showing you this as an example because there's loads of things we could do. We can get down here into the land and create like little sort of streaks, like for the grass perhaps, like just little bits in the grass, maybe little sort of scuffs here and there to create some additional levels of detail. You can get back into your rocks, for example, and start adding in even more and Again, little sort of variations in the ground, like little sort of scuffs and details and line work here and there, like get around like the base of some of it and create like curves and bumps and lumps in the ground, especially down here at the foreground. This will look really, really effective if you can pull this off. So just adding in more and more little sort of little blades in here, a couple more sort of streaks in there as well. And then you just detail and detail and detail to your heart's content. Little dashes, just imperfections, little new things that we didn't do initially because they would have taken even more time. And now you've done all of the work. You've now got all of this time now to just spend refining, especially up here in the tree. You know, you can get round like a leaf, for example, a couple of leaves, and just draw like little sort of jagged wobbly lines to create like the edge of the leaves. Draw some branches running through, you know, something maybe a little bit heavier like this, for example, and then just see what you want to create. You can do it all the way through the tree at the top as well. It's not just this little cluster that we did at the front. You can do it everywhere. Little details. I always want to give you the options to like curate and customize to your heart's content, like, and create, you know, extra little bits that you can spend more time than I can in this tutorial, perhaps, because we're already at a pretty lengthy time. And you can just detail your scene even more. Perhaps you could like, again, like create more imperfections like along this ground over here. You don't want to do too much because this is quite a bit further back. So little sort of dashes and lines in here. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't probably do too much over there, to be honest with you. Maybe just like a little bit, maybe along like the shore edge, perhaps. I'd probably go back to my layer though for the add layer. Go back to the same color. Oh, in fact, I'll grab the middle of the third column from the right. I might add in like a few little kind of streaks along this very top edge here. I know I'm not clipped, so I just need to bear that in mind. I'm probably better off using the paintbrush, but just a few little bright edges here. Maybe even some bright little flicks in those dark lines for the grass as well. Like you can add in so much. I could definitely get into this grass here and just pull out a few blades here with the add layer effect in play. That would just hopefully sharpen up, and that would just give me some nice bright tone in there. And this add layer, you can also go back to the paints. You can use the same brush we've been using, and you could even, there's a little fly on my screen, you could even just add in a few little sort of slightly brighter patches here at the foreground, you know, like I'm doing right now, just slightly layering in very lightly, building in like a little bit of a brighter tone. Now, the only thing I would say that you should do is the palette was exactly the same colors for the foreground and over here. So what I would do is I would grab the color layer for that area. I'd go to my adjustments and hue, saturation and brightness, and I would go ahead and just bring the saturation down to about 41%. And then I would punch up the brightness as well to about 56. What that will do is that will also make it a lot brighter in that space. If I undo that, colors tend to get, obviously they fall off the further you get away, so things will start to get bluer, they'll start to get more faint, and the saturation should always be at the front, so that should just tone that down a little bit. Now I've got a couple more additional things that you may want to do and prefer the look of. Here at the middle layer here, if you were to tap on your line work and alpha lock it, then go to your colors, we can utilize these colors here. So if I grabbed the top of the third column from the right and then tap on my line work and fill it in, I could drop in this blue tone, which gives it a bit more of like a flatter look to it. So you've got these dark lines, or you can do the blue. If you choose the blue, you can then go into your mounting group and do the same with the line work. So you tap on the line work and alpha lock it, go to your colors and grab the top of the second column from the right, that's important. Tap on the layer and fill it, and those lines will just disappear. Now you can just trick yourself into using this one, perhaps actually the top of the third column from the right, just to get a little bit more of that color. And then at the foreground you've got dark lines, which means you'll need to go into group number 1, open up the line work, tap on it, alpha lock it, go to your colors, grab the dark color top of the fourth column from the right, and then tap on it and fill it, and then that will just give your lines a bluer tone to it. You may of course need to go to your line works that you've created up here and keep them as black, or do the same thing. You know, you may want to go ahead and tone them down and make them the blue tone. So tap on it, alpha lock it, tap on it and fill it, and then all of your lines will match up. So that's just an option if you want that nice blue outline effect. And to be honest with you, I love the blue outline, so I'm going to leave it exactly like that. And I'm going to go ahead and pinch with 2 fingers, go full screen with 4, and we end up with today's finished design. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, a little bit longer one, and if you managed to make it all the way through, please drop a like on the video. You're a superstar for joining me throughout the whole of this tutorial. Make sure to tag me in your finished creations wherever you decide to share them, and also come and check out my Patreon, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters. Patreon supporters have a exclusive catalogue now of over 150 exclusive tutorials that are not available here on YouTube. However, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because I also post a weekly video here on my channel as well. So subscribe for weekly tutorials. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.